Hello everyone, my name is Michael Chalmers and this is my video presentation on John Dewey. John Dewey was an American philosopher and teacher who became famous due to his philosophies in experimentalism, which we'll get into later. He was born in 1859 on October 20th in Burlington in the USA and later dying in 1953 on the 1st of June in New York City. Experimentalism is an idea that John Dewey philosophized quite hard during his later years of education, and then later implemented during his time at the Chicago University, where he actually, in fact, started a primary school where he implemented the type of education which would later further go on to the rest of the world and into the future. Experimentalism in itself is the idea that a child should be allowed to explore their surroundings for an answer instead of being given an answer to a question or an argument. In this way, education was changed quite hard during the future due to this, in the way that primary schools and preschools were actually created, with certain elements being placed in the classroom to change it to that certain standard. So in this way, this is the way that he contributed to educational practices today. During his time, the socio-economic climate was quite harsh because during his later years, around the 1900s to the 1930s, World War I had just begun and finished during that time. Therefore, the environment in which education was set in many countries was kind of put to the side. Therefore, it wasn't given very much money towards actually developing it, rather into war profiteering, for instance, weapons and soldiers. Therefore, unintentionally, John Dewey was actually given an advantage with his education type, as he was able to implement it quite easily, and therefore it spread quite quickly and therefore to the rest of the world. For me, John Dewey was quite significant in a lot of ways, but the main reason being that his philosophies and my way of education is quite similar. He expressed the idea that children should be able to think creatively for themselves without needing a teacher or a supervisor to guide them in a certain way. For instance, I have quite a lot of experience with pre-primaries and out-of-school care children, and in both situations, the children are allowed to make their own decisions and think creatively, not just in the classroom, but in the playground as well. So instead of a teacher directing them to use a certain piece of equipment, they're allowed to use their imagination and think of something themselves. So this is why I quite heavily agree with what John Dewey did during his time, because he tried to implement this system, in which he did eventually. Therefore, that's why I believe that he is significant to me, and this concludes my presentation on John Dewey. I hope you enjoyed.